So a couple of days ago, I finally sat down and finished watching season one of Hajime no Ippo, the best boxing anime I've ever seen. Well, I haven't seen any other boxing anime, so that's kind of a loaded statement. But I, for a very, very good portion of this show, seriously sat through this and thought that I was watching my new favorite anime. Like, there was not a moment in this show that I was not like invested, engaged, like excited. Like, there was so much going on, so much character drama, and just wholesome heart to it. So much character building, so many great fights. A big emphasis on the realism and the training and like how that affects the characters. It is a legit like goat boxing show. Like, it is the go-to boxing show. I was completely enamored with this thing from start to finish. Like, I have a couple of nitpicks. Like, on one hand, I kind of feel that Ippo sort of got into boxing a little bit too easily, like beating like just. I feel as if he should have. There were times where I felt like he should have lost more. Like, early on, like he basically just does nothing but win, win, win throughout the entire series, and you can see why, because he's a great boxer, and he usually. And the show does a great job of building up suspense, and you do genuinely feel that like he could lose any given fight. In fact, during there were several times during this where I was just like, yeah, he's going to lose, he's going to lose, he's going to lose, and then he never really does, except for that one time where I honestly thought he was going to win. It's a really, really, really complex show in that regard, where like it always keeps you guessing, it always keeps you engaged, it always makes you feel like the fights can go either way, right? Like, the show does a great job of building up all the characters. That is I really I should have talked about this show when I watched it last year. It's hard to believe it's been an entire year since I started watching this, but I actually remember just watching that first Ippo versus Sendo fight a year ago and just being like incredibly hyped over it, because that was like the most mind-blowing conclusion to a fight I think I've ever seen in my life. I did not see it coming. It was just so impressive, and uh, the show really makes you care about boxing, even if you're not a boxing fan. And I think I've said this before about like this kind of material, usually when it comes to licensed games, is that like Ippo might have given me a new interest, right? In like fitness and like boxing and like these kind of athletes, like a new respect for them, right? Like, Ippo gave me perspective on this lifestyle, and I don't think that's something that most shows can do, most media can do, really. It really does feel like, it just really feels mind-blowing how the creator just sort of came out here and made this really, really engaging show about boxing and just following your dreams and doing this kind of stuff. It's incredibly engaging, incredibly fun, and I highly recommend anyone to watch it. You can watch the English dub for free on YouTube, which is what I did. It was just so good, like so good. And not just I do think this is the biggest takeaway thing I have for the series as a whole. I think is that the opponents, it would be really easy to just sort of have these guys that Ippo would go up against, beat, and then never really talk about again. But no, you never really feel that way. It's kind of incredible how characters like Miyata, Vorg, Sendo, Saiki, the Southpaw guy. What was his name? I thought that was. Were they Sadeki? I think it was something like that. All these guys have these like characterizations, their personalities, their backstories, their relationships with Ippo, their training, their own specialties, their own styles, their own approaches to fighting. Not just with Ippo, but with like each other, because you do see you do occasionally see other people fighting, right? You do see a bunch of the occasional match, especially towards the end, where it's kind of My favorite match in the second half, I would say, after the Sendo fight was coincidentally Sendo versus the Southpaw, right? Which was honestly better than the actual fight with Ippo, where Sendo is going up against this guy that was being built up that when it came in to train with Ippo once, right? This guy who's been hyped up for a couple of episodes now, right? We start learning what his process is like, and he starts like doing all this shit to really aggravate Sendo. Like it really does feel like Sendo cannot win, and it's just ooh, but it's so good. Like it's so good. Seeing this character like that came out of nowhere, sort of challenged an already established character, like an opponent of Ippo's, and sort of form this own in the ring sort of rivalry, and sort of have its own satisfying like fight and build up and just conclusion, especially that conclusion. Top 10 anime beatdowns for sure. I feel like wow, like this show made me care about a someone who wasn't even a primary character, someone who was just an opponent, right? Someone who was just sort of like a friend and rival to Ippo, just sort of going up against this thing. It really makes the characters feel nuanced and feel like actual people, as opposed to like just antagonists or opponents or rivals. Like it's incredibly engaging how this show constantly evolves and constantly like builds off of itself, and constantly incorporates new ideas, new training, new characters, all of which nearly every character in this show is likable. Like almost everyone, I would say, is extremely compelling and really does a lot to make the world feel really alive. Like even characters like Ippo's mom and his girlfriend. I am calling her his girlfriend at this point. Like she is his girlfriend. I totally ship it. The show, even those characters that are sort of like out of focus, sort of have their own heartwarming aspect to it. Like Ippo's mom getting sick and him having to take care of her is like legitimately heartbreaking. That has nothing to do with boxing, but this kind of stuff happens. You know what I mean? It's just it's a phenomenal show for sure, and I'm definitely going to check out the manga. If it was a digital manga, I would have gotten it already. I don't want to buy like an 1,000 volume manga and have it like sitting around my house. That just doesn't seem. I don't own One Piece for the same reason. I don't even. I'm gonna run out of space really quickly if I did that shit. But I definitely would read it. I definitely am interested in reading it. Continuing the story, maybe expanding some certain things. I've heard nothing but good things about what happens that next. I've already been spoiled to a certain extent, unfortunately, because the anime doesn't cover certain things, which is kind of disappointing. And I don't even know where the anime goes from here. Like, I don't see a season 2, but like they make new series, like, well, Rising, new challenger. I don't know what this is. I don't know what this is about. Like, I don't know what's going on here. I just feel like, this is, if all of the fights were as good as the best fights in the show, right? Like, this would legit be a 10 out of 10 anime. Well, I guess it already kind of is. What I mean is, it would probably be my all-time favorite anime if every fight was excellent. And unfortunately, there are a couple of times where they sort of glaze over certain aspects that sort of hold things back. Like, for example, Sayaki, the speed star, sort of comes out of nowhere, fights Ippo, and Ippo beats him. It's an interesting fight, but it's not like, it doesn't have the build-up it needed. It's noticeable. Like, I do think, to a certain extent, the series did go on for too long. Like, the first season is like 70 episodes or something like that, and there are some aspects to it that are sort of out of place. Like this weird couple of episodes, the worst in the series, where we get the origin story of Kimura and Aoki, which Again, probably I love Kamura and Aoki, but we didn't need to learn their backstories, and it wasn't very interesting anyway. Uh, and it kind of ruined characters like Takamura too by like shoving him in there, and it just feels like we don't need the backstory of every single character. Okay, like the actual opponents have great backstories, but like those guys did not. We didn't need, and I was fond of those characters too, but they had their funny moments, and their personalities did develop over time. They were kind of bland at the beginning, but they sort of like developed their personalities going forward, or at least I was able to pick out their personalities. So I am rather fond of them both at this stage. There's a reason they're there, is what I'm getting at. Like they're not terrible characters or anything. Um, it's things like that. Like there are like some occasionally badly animated episodes. There's like that one really horrible one, episode 63 or something like that. The one where Miyata fights that guy. Yeah, that looks awful. Like straight up, like looks like it was made in MS Paint. It's that bad. I don't know what Madhouse was thinking. They were probably putting all their budget in that Sendo fight, that crazy, crazy Sendo fight. But yeah, I feel as if I feel as if this is a classic anime for a reason, and I would not be surprised if some people do consider it to be their all-time favorite anime. But I don't think it had the evolution that something that my favorite anime, Yu Yu Hakusho, had. Like Yu Yu Hakusho, for that good first half of the first 60 episodes, was constantly introducing new concepts, new characters, had great animation, rarely reused anything, and sort of amazing characters, and just was compelling up until the very end of the Dark Tournament arc. Now I will tell you that the second half is bullshit and shouldn't be watched by anyone, but for the most part, I find that the first half. I want to go back and watch the first half again and sort of give my thoughts on that. It's been like 5 years since I watched it. It's about time I return to it. It had so much personality, some of my favorite things ever, and I do think it nailed everything it was going for in that first 60 episodes. Again, a show doesn't need to go on that long. I do think that's the main problem with these kind of shows. They sort of like feel this need to go on forever when that's not really desirable at all for the most part, usually. I feel like they need to end at some point. Like, you can't just keep pumping things out forever and expect to have some kind of a spectacular high quality. You know what I mean? Like, there's going to be some kind of burnout eventually. You can do things to mitigate that. The One Piece guy like takes breaks every 4 weeks, I think. But I do think that maybe Ippo should have been divided into more seasons. Like maybe just make every episode spectacular. Like make every fight just a spectacle. Like there are like great fights. Most of them are great. But again, when there are moments like that, right? It kind of made the actual finale kind of feel a little bit flat for the most part. It was still good, and I still love the ending. Like, but it does feel like, oof, going by the standards that the show set on occasion, the ending did feel a little bit flat, and that kind of leaves me. Oof. Well, on one hand, I do want to read more. It's not like the story ends or anything like that, but I do feel like, oof, great show, but I love this show. There are no real problems with it. It is spectacular. Go out and watch it. I love Hajime no Ippo.